To questions, and looks like our Democratic colleagues are boycotting the hearing, so Senator Moody and I will have a chance to ask questions we'd like, and I think there's a lot to cover. First of all, Sheriff Boyd, I know you were very active as a leader of Operation Lone Star in Texas. Would you describe what that is?
So in the state of Texas, you have Operation Lone Star, which is a state-initiated program that helps to focus state law enforcement to go out and to conduct anti-smuggling operations and to help secure the border in Texas to provide assistance to our Border Patrol. And that's been going on since about 2021. But then you have the Operation Lone Star Grant, which is a grant from the state of Texas that provides funding to local agencies such as ourselves in order to pay for overtime and equipment needed to go out and combat transnational criminal activity across the state of Texas. And then what we have formed is the Operation Lone Star Task Force, which is now at 61 agencies across the state of Texas. And we come together and we work in unison with our partners at ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security, Texas Department of Public Safety, and Texas Parks and Wildlife, and of course, the Texas Department of Agriculture under Commissioner Sid Miller. And we go out and we help conduct enforcement operations to help secure Texas against the criminal predations of foreign entities.
Well, Sheriff, can you explain for people who are listening why, if these are federal immigration laws that are being violated by people illegally entering the country, why is it necessary for local and state law enforcement to work alongside of Customs and Border Protection, the Border Patrol, and ICE to deal with this problem?
Just to give you a little bit of perspective, so during the first Trump administration, the Goliad County Sheriff's Office on average arrested 77 people a year. In 2021, we arrested 252. We thought that was a phenomenal number.
How far are you from the border now?
180 miles.
Okay.
Halfway between Laredo and Houston.
Okay.
So from there, by 2024, we arrested 502 people. It climbed every single year. It now is on the path declining since the second Trump administration has come in. But the problem is that we have allowed tens of millions of people to come into this country illegally, and they are all beholden to the cartels, and they are moving around. And there's no way for our federal partners to be able to tackle this monumental problem without the assistance of local and state law enforcement. And as a law enforcement official, it is my duty to stand up and make sure that the citizens of my community and my safer state. And as part of that, I am there to help the federal partners that we have to achieve the goals given to them by the duly elected administration under President Trump.
And of course, that job's even harder when the federal government's policy is basically not to enforce immigration laws, correct?
That was exactly why we had the problem under the Biden administration in the first place, because the laws were not being enforced, and so we were being overrun by transnational criminal activity being directed by the cartels.
I think some people who don't live in Texas or don't understand the nature of the border thought that this wave of folks from Mexico and Central America and around the world would be welcomed with open arms by local border communities, which are overwhelmingly Hispanic. Can you explain what your experience has been?
What the reality is those folks do not come across and stay in those border communities. Yes, the border communities were not happy with this massive surge of criminality coming across the Rio Grande or across the border in other areas. But what you'll find is those individuals were being moved in by the cartels. When they got here, they are not free to go. They are indentured servants. They go where they've been assigned to go to. And those individuals would come up and in our area go to Houston for distribution all across the eastern half of the United States. Same as the cartel does with drugs, they did with people. And they moved them all throughout the U.S. And so it's not so much a border problem, which is part of the problem we've had, is describing it as a border problem. The real problem is it's now a problem for the entirety of the United States of America, thanks to the tens of millions of people allowed to come across under the previous administration.
So is it fair to say this is a problem that is not limited to the border, but extends throughout the country?
This is a national security issue of the highest level, sir, and it is coast to coast, border to border.
So Ms. Carter Walters, we're going to get to her in a minute, and Ms. Cathell, because there's a lot of questions I want to ask. I'm sure Senator Moody does as well. But one of the things you talked about, or that was mentioned, is so-called sanctuary cities don't cooperate with federal law enforcement officials. And my understanding is the Department of Homeland Security will issue a detainer on illegal aliens in the Goliad County Jail or any other jail. And in those jurisdictions where they do cooperate with federal law enforcement officials, the transfer of those individuals can occur there in the jail, and ICE isn't relegated to raiding populations in other places. It can happen on a much more orderly way. But you mentioned the 287G agreement. Could you describe that further?
So under the 287G program, which provides limited federal authority to local law enforcement after we've received our training on it, you have three different programs. You have the jail enforcement model, which is that allows us, if we arrest somebody on a state offense and they come into the jail, that provides somebody who has been trained access to the database in our jail to find out if that person who's already in jail is in this country legally or illegally. And there's a system we go through, and ICE verifies everything. The next program, which is what you were talking about, was the warrant service model. It's a warrant service officer model, which may sound like you're going out and knocking on doors, but that's not the case. What it does is it grants those who are trained in the jail the authorization to transfer somebody who's in jail on state custody from state to federal custody at the request of ICE. It also allows us to transport them from a facility that is not a contract facility for incarceration to another jurisdiction that is a contract facility for incarceration for federal crimes. The last program is the task force model program. And what that does is that allows us, my deputies in the field, myself included, to go out, and when we're conducting our business and we come across somebody that we believe is in this country without authorization, gives us the ability to contact ICE, to go through a verification process. ICE then tells us, yes, you are correct, that individual is in the country illegally, gives us the authorization to detain them. We detain them, we take them, and then we get them transported to a federally approved contracted facility for them to be housed at before they move on to where they're going to have their deportation hearing.
So in the absence of cooperation by the local or state jurisdiction to transfer those prisoners from state or local government custody to the federal government, are those individuals simply just released into the community?
You're absolutely correct, Senator. In those jurisdictions, which we refer to as sanctuary jurisdictions, those individuals then, once they make bond on their state charge, they're going to be allowed to return back out onto the streets within that community. If you're not part of the task force model, it may stop you for not having, for having a violation of traffic enforcement. And just because you're in this country illegally, you'd still get released and be driving around on the streets of America, even though you're not supposed to be here.
Thank you. Senator Moody?
Thank you, Senator Cornyn, and thank you for